Hey folks, this is Tron Games and welcome to Total War Warhammer 3. Today we're doing a kind of getting started guide for Festus the Leechlord, one of the Warriors of Chaos factions. And so there's a few major kind of faction mechanics you should be aware of. The first is souls. You can get souls from battles, looting, sacking, raising settlements. There's a few different other ways to get these as well. And you get them to use Gifts of Chaos. So I'll click here, and so we've got a bunch of different options. We could add units to our recruitment pool, or we can improve our growth. I'm just going to select this one to start with. I actually usually like the growth one, which I'll show in a second, but just good to keep an eye on this. Now we only have 500, so there is another one to do here, but you only typically want to do one of them on the first turn. Now, in terms of faction effects here, we'll take a quick look at this faction. So, first thing is when you conquer other factions, you can create them into vassal states, and those vassal states spread Nurgle corruption, they gain poison attacks. You can also brew plagues to buff armies and/or settlements, and then you get additional souls earned when you spread a plague. So, we'll just start with showing off what this looks like, and you should always spread a plague as often as you can, as long as you have the infections to do that. And you can get infections through a few different ways. You can fight battles, conquer settlements, things like that. But the plagues themselves, you always have a base plague and then a symptom. So it takes a while to unlock a bunch of the different symptoms here, and these symptoms are quite good generally. I typically tend to start with the Festus Ague plague, because this just gives additional growth to your settlements. Right now you only have the one. You can see some of the other buffs: reduced casualties from attrition, replenishment, you get additional souls, and missile resistance. Now you also get additional infections when a plague is spread, and we want to try to spread this plague to start with, and the Festus Ague gives the most infections when something is spread. So we're going to infest this right away. Now there are also certain settlements, like Middenheim, that have this Dark Fortress site. This is where you can actually build a full settlement. If you conquer more minor settlements or areas that don't have this tag on them, you can only build a few buildings, so keep that in mind as you go. It can be worth vassalizing factions that don't kind of get access to those areas. So like you might probably want to take this area, whereas if you conquer Talabheim, you would probably vassalize that section. So we'll start here with the Brass Keep. The Brass Keep is quite a strong initial starting location. It's kind of one way in, and you start with this kind of single settlement in this province. So what we want to do here, or what I tend to do here, is I tend to build one of these Chaos Shrines, because I want to unlock the Chaos Sorcerer as early as I can. And then I typically will come over here. You can get additional money, or you can get additional growth. I tend to take additional growth because your initial goal basically revolves around leveling up this region. Now, if we take Festus here, we're going to fight against this guy, and we'll talk about a few different mechanics that he brings to the table. Now here you can take souls, you can replenish your army, or you can take infections. And there's a few different things you might want to do here. I am actually going to take the infections to start with, because now I can spread another plague if I want to. Now there's a few other pieces here. We won't actually get to see the Path of Glory. You can take characters and devote them against specific gods. We won't get far enough in to really look at that, but we'll be able to see just a brief kind of overview here. You actually can devote them to different gods, and you can unlock different kind of boons with different heroes. So something to remember. And because we just sent a plague here and it's a single settlement province. Make sure you double check your commandments. Now there are a few different things in the early game here to keep in mind because you have Nurgle corruption. Nurgle corruption increases growth, control, and increases the chance of plague spreading. Now if we look at this settlement closely, there's only 3 turns remaining for that plague, so we might be wanting to actually use the Plague Apothecary to increase growth and increase the chance of the plague actually spreading. You can reduce construction costs to more Nurgle corruption. This is really good off the bat. I'm going to select that one to start with. Now here we won that first battle. We're going to take this settlement as well. Now if you fight these manually you'll do a little bit better, but I'm going to take this one and we're actually going to, you can see we can raise it and get souls and infections, sack it for more infections, or occupy it. I'm going to sack it this turn just so you can see one of the little tricks here. So this region actually comes out over here, so you can actually kind of sneak back in there. Then we can talk a little bit about how Festus recruits units. His initial army isn't super good, so you want to be a little bit careful with it, but you can instantly recruit war bands, so I'm gonna do that here. And then you also have gifted units that you can unlock as well, so I'm gonna take those ones there too. Just to buff up some units, you could get some regiments of renown, but you can also upgrade different units using the war band upgrades. I'm not going to actually to do that this turn because I can't yet, but that's kind of the first turn stuff. We'll talk a little bit here about factions before we advance the turn. So the thing is that actually the faction that we just beat up is supposedly, you know, the strongest faction around us. You're surrounded by quite a few weak factions to start with, but you know, you're really not super far away from some stronger ones. You have kind of Reichland down to the southwest. Kislev is over to the kind of east and southeast. There are a few other factions in the area that are potentially a little bit dangerous, but it will take you a little bit to get to them. There's a Skaven faction up here. Wood Elves are over here. There's also an Orc faction here too, and even further this way is Bretonnia. So there are some factions in the area to be aware of, but off the bat, I mean, most of the factions nearby are fairly weak, so you don't have to worry about them too much. So we'll take some tech here. Now I'm going to just select this one to start with, and I'm going to pick that one purely because I want to work my way over in this direction. Festus has a really interesting mechanic where he actually has a really high battle healing cap compared to other lords, so you can heal his army for a lot, especially if you fight a lot of battles manually. He has increased Nurgle authority as well, and his plague duration is significantly longer. Now I'm going to go here, and then this one will take that. And so that's kind of our first turn. We also got some additional souls, but we don't want to jump and get the second one rolling quite yet. So we'll advance the turn here a little bit, and we'll continue along. Now, one of the main things to be really aware of with Festus faction is just how units are recruited. Because units are either gifted or warbands are recruited, you can actually find yourself, if you recruit a lot of units quickly, you can find yourself in a scenario where you actually do not have enough units to kind of fill if you lose a battle, or you actually can't kind of fill your army up. And this is why it's so important to level up the Brass Keep, because, you know, in the first 10-15 turns, probably all of these factions in the area are going to declare war on you. They don't like you. They think you're kind of this real blight on their area, and I mean, they're right. You come in and you unleash a whole bunch of plagues and things in their area, and they don't really particularly take very kindly to that. So I'll occupy this settlement here just so I can show you, because this isn't a Dark Fortress site. We can only, you know, put in some rudimentary upgrades here. Actually, I recommend against upgrading anything in these minor settlements, at least off the bat, because you want to level the brass keep up as high as you can, as fast as you can. Now, the one thing here we have an abundance of is infections, so I'm going to come back over here, and we're going to take a look at some of the different options. So, one thing we might want to boost is we might infect Festus with increased replenishment, and we'll do that. Get him kind of rolling on the plagues. You want to keep plagues going kind of as often as you can, because they are really quite powerful, especially if they infect other factions, settlements, or armies. They can actually kind of single-handedly help you push and win battles, because they weaken the armies so badly. So here, again, we can't recruit any units here in this, but we can actually get some more war bands. So because we can do this instantly, you can actually wait a few turns. Our army here is okay for now, but let's look at his victory conditions. So biggest factions that you want to get rid of are Middenheim, which is directly beside you. They actually have a few settlements, so you want to be a little bit careful with them. Prague, which is up over in this direction, and then Kislev, which is just a little bit to the south. So for Festus's campaign, you typically want to work your way kind of around the Brass Keep. You know, I tend to fight and vassalize a bunch of these factions in the area. I tend to kill Midland, and then I tend to work my way to the east and the north area. So that's kind of his short campaign. Long campaign is purely about just collecting or vassalizing different regions and conquering a lot of territory. So overall, there's a few other things to be aware of with his campaign. One thing that you often will find that you'll run short of in Festus' campaign is money. But the nice part is there's often caravans that come through this area. A single caravan coming through this area can allow you to sink 10,000 favor into the Brass Keep. So keep that in mind as you go in the campaign. If you see some of those come through, it can be really quite useful. And just don't forget to choose a second one of these. They are actually different if you're into the interior versus out here, so just keep that in mind. There's Gifts of Nurgle on the outside, and then you get Chaos Undivided in the middle. So they are slightly different. With these, actually, the longer you keep them going, the better the better the ones that come available are. So as you spend souls, you basically earn towards being able to do different Gifts of Nurgle. So it's important to keep these going and keep fighting and keep leveling up Festus. So that's about all I've got for kind of the beginning of Festus's campaign. If you like the content, feel free to leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe to the channel for more in the future. Thanks for watching.